This one is a regular hybrid tea. Almost looks like a grandiflora. The grandiflora is basically a type of hybrid tea that gets bigger, often has bigger flowers. That's why I say it almost looks like one. Bigger leaves, bigger flowers, bigger bush. So great when you really need something with height to really fill in the space. With the hybrid teas, we tend to put a lot of focus on how to prune and also how to deadhead. Probably the most common question we get on roses, how do I deadhead? So if you look at this, for example, you see, let's say this one's about ready to be deadheaded right now. So this one, and of course I did forget, I want to deadhead this one right here. I can see where it branches right here. I'm actually going to take that off here. Okay, there we go. Now, later I'm going to want to deadhead this one too. It's just about going to be finished pretty soon. In that case, where do I want to go?
Above the next grade?
Now, the classic tradition of deadheading will say go to the 5th leaf. A lot of people ask me, what does that mean? If you look here, see how this leaf here has 3 leaves on it? See that? And then down below, this one has 5. Basically, the idea is to train you to think, I need to go a little bit lower. Don't just clip up here. I want to go a little bit lower. In this case, you know what? I want to go lower than that, actually. But the stick just kind of sticking out here. It's not contributing that much to the shape of the bush. I kind of want a nice thick stem to grow new roses out of. I can actually go down to the next leaf here, cut right above that. This is another type of hybrid tea. This one tends to have smaller flowers. This is a floribunda, yes. But tends to have more of them, tends to have clusters of flowers all together on one stem quite often. Really pretty flowers. Often these are the ones that kind of roughly looking sometimes or have fun shapes and colors to them. The floribundas are really fantastic, both for cutting roses and also for just having a really nice looking rose bush in the yard because they tend to have so many flowers on them. So if you want something that really contributes to the landscape, the floribundas are fantastic.
What do they call that color?
This particular one is called angel face. Isn't that gorgeous? I went around the garden center just picking out the prettiest roses, and I think that was the first one I grabbed. It's so pretty. Now what I have found has been getting more and more popular lately are the shrub roses. So for example, where'd they go? So I've got a climber actually. Grab this one. Now the shrub roses, there's less emphasis on putting on exactly where to prune. I mean, you pretty much follow the same guidelines. Kind of shape up the plant. Don't leave long, very spindly, thin stems sticking out. But a lot of times with the shrub roses, because they bloom so much, a lot of times you can just almost take the hedge trimmers when you're in a hurry. Just go ahead and kind of trim the whole thing up and deadhead all at once. You can actually do that with the shrub rose. The shrub roses are more dense, bushy. So instead of those long canes, you actually see something that looks like a shrub. So when you're needing a shrub for the landscape, you can actually go with these and it fits right in where you're needing that bushy look. And then it's got flowers besides. I mean, it's just gonna bloom and bloom and bloom. These tend to bloom more than any of the other roses. Yes?
When we lived in Missouri, people had huge bushes. They called them knockout roses.
Yes.
Would that be that?
So you had the knockout rose. The knockout rose is another type of shrub rose. There's many, I think we're low on them at the moment, but yes, we do carry them. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And it became a huge bush.
Yeah. How big they get depends on which type it is, but most of them are going to be in the 4-foot range, which is a really, Yeah, they do. They get more bushy rather than getting real tall.
Moves on.
Yeah, the size of the flower will depend on which shrub you get. You can see this one has a real tiny flower, but lots of them. The knockout has a rose that looks more like hybrid tea. So they vary in size as far as the bloom size goes, but they're all just gorgeous, bushy, easy care. Like I said, we're finding everyone's kind of saying, I love the look of the rose, but I want something that's easy care and doesn't require me to think about how I prune it as much. Yes?
Can shrub roses encroach on normal roses?
Can shrub roses encroach on normal roses? That's actually a really good question. So the thing about the shrub rose, they get wider by sending up shoots from the ground, from the root. So if you had it really close, it would get bushier and bushier over the years. And eventually, yeah, if you had them pretty close, they could start to encroach. But really, you can just go ahead and, trim them out, control them however you want to. It's really not, I don't think it would be any worse than, say, any other two kinds of roses next to each other. And almost any rose can kind of sucker from time to time from below the graft. Most of the hybrid teas are grafted. There's one where I can, let me grab this. This is easier. So if you look at this, this is a rose tree, and you can see there's kind of a lot of branches coming out of this stalk here, and it looks kind of knotty down there, kind of bulging places where the canes are coming out of the stalk. If you look at most of these hybrid teas, you'll see the same thing. This one's Cinco de Mayo, got a real big knot at the very base. I know you can't see it, but if you were to come up and look later after, you'll see most of these have a real thick knot at the bottom. That's actually graft. So basically what they've done is they've taken let's say this one's Rosie the Riveter, new release. They've taken Rosie the Riveter and they've grafted her onto a rootstock of a different type of rose. Usually Dr. Huey. Dr. Huey is a very tough, kind of wild rose, so real tough rootstock, able to take our tough soils here, just makes the plant stronger when you're dealing with hybrid teas. And so they graft this onto that rootstock. In this case, instead of grafting it at the bottom, they trained a single branch just to be completely straight, and then they grafted it up here. So anything that were to try to come out of this stalk or below would be the wrong flower. It would not be Rosie the Riveter. In this case, the graft is at the very bottom, down by the soil, right above the soil. Try not to bury that graft. It can cause it to rot. Once the graft dies, you lose your pretty flower, and you're stuck with this wild rose rootstock. Let's see.
Are all roses do they all have the graft?
So
Then
do all
they're not
roses have
really-
the graft? It's commonplace with the hybrid teas, with most of
Okay.
the classic roses.
Okay,
They do it less with the shrub roses these days.
okay.
So, like this one's children's hope. You'll find that it's just coming out of out of the soil. There's no graft. You won't see that big bulging knot. Same with the knockout rose. You're not going to see that big knot down there. You'll just see the branches coming directly out of the root. So if it's something that is grafted, like I said, if you see any shoots coming up from below the graft, it's not going to be this. It's going to be the rootstock. It's not going to be very pretty, or at least not what you bought it for. So go ahead, trim those off. Don't let them grow. I've seen what happens when someone did, because years of neglect. And so you have this, the original rose, real pretty, and then the stuff was coming up from under the root, under the graft, and just engulfing the original rose. And so it was just taking over. Now this one is another shrub. Again, you can see more bushy. There's no graft at the bottom. You can see dense, bushy, really pretty shrub as a whole. Not just a plant with really pretty flowers on it, but the shrub itself is actually very pretty, dense, bushy, covered in color. Again, shrub roses just bloom like crazy. So, and then we've got a climber back here. This one's not staked yet. It's not that tall yet. Basically, the climbers, they kind of grow out kind of funny, just sort of kind of arching out and not really taking on a shape. So generally what you do with a climber is you just tie it to a trellis or train it to weave through a trellis. And that's what most people are going to do with a climber. Yeah.
On the climbers, I put a little rose next to a fence, and it's kind of got long shoots coming up. But how do you split it? How do you make it so it'll branch out so that it'll cover more?
Basically, you train the climber when it produces new shoots, as long as they're above the graft. Again, they tend to be grafted. As the new shoots come out, weave them into the part of the trellis where you want them. And then they're going to kind of harden into that position. So try to do it while they're still young as they're growing. Once they've stiffened, it's hard to force them into a new shape. You can always trim and cut, take them out. You can actually use the same methods for pruning on a climber that you do in a hybrid tea. Generally, you prune, I'm talking about the major pruning, not the deadheading. Your major pruning, you do it late in March. And what you do is you start taking out all the ugly stuff. You take out the crossing branches, you take out dead branches, discolored, anything that got damaged during the winter. Take out real old branches. Anything that's real old just won't produce a lot of flowers. It'll just get ugly and woody, make the whole thing look ugly. In just a sec. And then, so you do the same thing with hybrid teas and with climbers. You actually do this kind of with everything, but with climbers and hybrid teas, the old rule is to pretty much say, try to reduce it down to about 3 to 5 canes. It's not hard and fast, but that's kind of the old rule in order to get the biggest flowers possible.
And will they split? I mean, will they get more full? Because it's just
Yes.
like long, skinny branches now.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
And then I also heard that Epsom salt helps with roses. Have you heard that? No?
Epsom salt is, sometimes people add it to the soil for magnesium.
Oh.
Honestly, all you end up doing is raising the salt content of the soil. Our soil is salty enough, let's not overdo it. Yeah, stick with fertilizers and supplements that are kind of made for the purpose so that you know you're not, sterilizing your soil with salt.
Thank you.
Is it better to train the forward front stems that come out as is it better to train them as opposed to cutting them off? In other words, you're trying to get them to go back to the fence.
On a climber?
Yeah, on a climber that shoots forward with.
Yeah, again, untrained, a climber will just kind of go all over the place.
Yeah.
Some of the shoots will kind of ramble on the ground, some of them may go up but then kind of fall over. Without any kind of guidance, they're just going to be a mess. So I would say take those shoots as they're growing out and kind of gently bend them towards the trellis, tie them in place, start getting them where you want them to go, bend them towards that trellis while they're still.
Cutting them off.
Yeah, if it's giving you trouble and you can't get it trained, then yeah, go ahead, cut it off. It'll grow more. No big deal. Yeah.
Are there certain roses that just bloom more than others?
Again, so the question is, are there some roses that bloom more than others? I would say, they all bloom great, but some will put more focus into creating big flowers, while others will create more flowers. So your floribundas and your shrub roses, they tend to make lots of flowers and just be covered in flowers. While some certain types of hybrid teas and grounded flowers that have those real big flowers, they may not have the count, but it's still going to be covered in a lot of color just because the flowers are so big.
Are there things that you could add to them to make them benefit?
Yeah, we're going to get into food pretty quick. Any more questions on pruning, deadheading? All right, let's go into food.
Ella, before you do that, could you start the sign-up sheet around?
Oh, sure.
It's right in
Let's
back of
see.
you.
Ah, there we go. So we're gonna send a sign-up sheet around. If you want to, put your name and email address on there. And Ken Davis here is gonna send you whatever handouts apply to the class and then also the video. Yes. So I'm gonna pass this around. And also, today only, we're gonna do 20% off of the roses, since we're doing the class today. So 20% off all of the roses, that includes the trees, all the shrubs, everything. All the roses are 20% off. Yes?
Is there a better time of year than right now to plant your roses?
Is there a better time of year?
Well, it's being so hot and everything right now.
You know, we don't necessarily have an off-season, especially for roses. They actually take pretty well. Monsoon and fall are always the best times to plant anything. But as far as seasons go, it's kind of good, better, and best. We don't have a bad season necessarily. Sometimes, I think in some cases it is better to go during the warmer season, but you know, rather than say, you can plant in the winter, but it is a good idea to maybe not do it in the dead of winter when you're still getting hard freezes. It just kind of depends on how, you know, the circumstances. But we don't necessarily have a very strict off-season. But yes, spring is excellent. I actually do fine in summer. They're amazingly tough. So it's one of those things, you know, some things have trouble going in during the summer. I've never really had an issue with roses. Monsoon time and fall actually work fantastic for planting anything. That raised humidity in the monsoon time, and then that cooler weather in the fall just make it a lot easier for plants to go in and kind of get established a little bit and then be ready for the winter. And then in the springtime, when they wake up and start producing new leaves, they don't even realize they've been moved anymore. They're just kind of used to it. So, yes.
On the tree roses, if you're trying to train a rose to do that yourself, about how long does it take to, in other words, how long to do?
How long to get that trunk?
Yeah.
So the question was, what if you wanted to train your own topiary like this? How long would it take? Depending on the size, it's going to take at least a few years. And the taller you want to get that, and the thicker, you know, this cane needs to be in order to be self-supporting. You see, right now it's got this stick, but you'll probably be able to either take that out, either right away or very soon, or at the very least replace it with something a little bit looser. Basically, you have to get that thick enough that it can support the weight of the bush, and until then, you'll have to keep the bush on the small side. So yeah, like I said, you're definitely looking into at least a few years to actually train it yourself.
Thank you.
Maybe several, depending on the size. Let's see. Okay, so we wanted to talk about what really makes the flowers bloom. So let's talk about this. If you look at a fertilizer or any kind of supplement for plants, you'll always notice there's 3 numbers on there. That's called your NPK. So the first one is nitrogen. Nitrogen, among other things, but mainly nitrogen is what produces foliage, lots of leaves, which of course is important to keep the plant healthy so it can photosynthesize. The middle number is phosphorus. Phosphorus does a number of things actually. It's important for the entire health of the plant. It helps the plant to take up nutrients. It produces roots, gets a nice strong root system. It's got to have phosphorus to produce any kind of root. If you've ever tried to grow bulbs without adding phosphorus, you'll notice you can never seem to get them to form. That's why. And then its third thing is blooming. So basically, if you think of it this way, that the plant is always budgeting. It's always saying, here's how much phosphorus I have, I'm going to use some of it for growing roots. I'm going to use it for my general health, for building stronger, thicker stems. And then how much phosphorus do I have left over after that? I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it towards the blooming. So the more it has, the more it blooms. So you have to have that phosphorus, that middle number, in order to get flowers like this. Last number is potassium, again, for strength, immunity. Again, these are basically the 3 macronutrients that are absolutely essential for sustaining life in a plant. So this is the all-purpose food. This is what I use at home for everything, literally everything. I go through 4 times a year and I just sprinkle this on the soil around each and every single plant. No matter what kind of plant it is, they all get this. That keeps them very healthy and strong. If you compare it to a human diet, it's like a well-balanced meal with all the right proteins and carbs and good fats and vegetables, and it's a good, well-balanced meal. That's what that is. Yes?
So is that intended for all plants? Like if you have succulents or anything that you might have
This is
that will
intended
work?
for pretty much everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what you want to do, now this will keep things blooming. This will keep things really healthy. But you can boost that phosphorus count. That's the nutrient you get to play with. If you want a little more, you can. So there's different ways to do that. There's the one I'm holding here. This is superphosphate. Okay? Now, both of these will produce flowers. Both of these are a natural source of phosphorus. This one is bone meal. This one is superphosphate, which is a mineral. Bone meal is really slow acting. I've used it for years. It's great, but it's very slow acting. So this is something that you would put down within the next few months in order to see results next spring. That's how slow acting it is. So it's something you have to plan ahead if you're using. On the other hand, this one, about 2 weeks is what you need. 2 weeks. So you put this down now, and that garden party you're having 2 weeks from now is gonna look fantastic. So this one's very fast acting, and it has a super high number. If you look at the back on the, again, they have an NPK, it's on the front here, 0,18,0. So this is a supplement. It doesn't have nitrogen, doesn't have potassium, it's not a complete food, it's merely a supplement. So it's got that middle number, 18. From a natural source, that's actually pretty high. That's like insane, to be perfectly honest. Yes?
What about dried up horse poop that you've had for like 2 years? What is that the nitrogen?
So if you wanted to use old composted manure as a food, yes, that's going to produce nitrogen, lots and lots of it. Not going to have much else on the NPK. So it's pretty much nitrogen. So if you're one of those people that likes to make your own food, you've got to be thinking, just like when you're cooking meal for yourself, you're thinking, okay, do I have all my macronutrients? Is it a well-balanced meal? You've got to think the same way when you're feeding a plant. So I know some people that do try to make their own food, so that means, okay, you're going to put in the manure for the nitrogen, and it's going to have some other micronutrients as well. You're going to put in probably some old bones or minerals for the phosphorus. You're going to put in maybe some old rusty nails for the iron. You're going to put in all these different things, trying to get that entire, both of your NPK as well as your micronutrients, trying to get that in complete meal. You kind of need some space in order to do that, not much composting. You have to be testing your compost pile to make sure that your nutrient count is high enough. And you have to enjoy it, which some of us do, but not all of us have the time for it. And so that's why I say you really want to, if you're not making your own, if you don't have that kind of time, you want to buy a really good complete food for your fertilizer. So in my case, because at the moment I just don't have the time and space to make my own food, definitely, and I can never do better than this. Years went into this making, getting it perfected, I'll never do better than this, ever.
Is that all natural?
This is natural. This is all stuff like bird guano and minerals like iron and sulfur and cottonseed meal and all kinds of really good natural stuff. So yeah, if you're into, say, organic gardening, it's gonna do very well. And then, like I said, you can supplement with the superphosphate in order to boost that phosphorus count and get way more flowers. In fact, this is what went on to all of these roses. Yes?
Do you apply them at the same time?
Yeah, you can apply them at the same time, yes. So about 3 weeks ago, I asked Cheryl this morning, when was it you applied it? She said it was superphosphate. She applied it 3 weeks ago to all the roses, and especially the rose trees. So you can see the results. That's superphosphate. You have to keep applying it every 4 to 6 weeks.
So that's not a 4 times a year? That's
Yeah, this
or-
one you have to use a little more often than the plant food.
Okay.
Yeah. The bone meal you can use less often. If you're one of those that you're strapped for time, you can use bone meal far less often. Once a year is probably good. You might even get away with twice. In some cases, it'll even last up to 2 years, but that's what I've read in places that it lasts up to 2 years, but at home, what I have personally found is I get about a year out of it, not 2. So you can use this one less often, you just gotta remember to put it on time. So put it down fall at the latest to get it working for next spring. So what I have found is that pink flowers, or pinkish hues are the ones that will let you know if it's time to fertilize. They will be the ones that will let you know first. They are the ones that will lose their color and start fading to a light pink and then almost to white if they're not getting enough fertilizer. Some of the reds will do the same, but it's not quite as red as it should be. A lot of you have Platinia. It's that bush that has evergreen leaves that have red leaves on the top. Very, very popular. If you notice that those red leaves aren't as red as they should be, or they don't stay red as long as they should, that says I need to be fertilized. Same thing with maple trees. They're supposed to be red in the fall. You got a maple tree that doesn't seem to be turning red in the fall. Reds and pinks are always the ones that will let you know first that something's going on with your fertilizer. So you need to get your fertilizer down. And if you know you've been fertilizing really well and you're still not seeing the color that you should, it means the pH of your soil has gone way too high. When the pH is too high, it keeps the plant from being able to take up nutrients properly. And the fact is that we do have a very high pH here. Our soil is very alkaline, our water is even worse. So if that is the case with you, I would say you need to be using soil sulfur every year. Another thing you can definitely use is the humic acid on a regular basis, every couple months, depending on what you're doing, which helps to boost the life in the soil. And when you get the soil living, the pH starts to gradually get better. And then the soil sulfur is strong but safe. Let's get that pH down so that this plant can start living, start taking up food. So definitely, if you're not seeing reds and pinks, or really any of your colors not coming through right, you should be using the soil sulfur once a year. Did you have a question?
You answered it
Okay.
once a year.
Yeah, once a year. Yeah, this stuff, it lasts a while. It does a really good job, so you don't have to be using it a lot.
Can you use it at any time throughout the year, or when you have
You can
apply
pretty
it?
much do it anytime. I think Ken always makes it part of his spring regimen. Yeah, he'll go through, do the whole soil sulfur, fertilizer, and possibly superphosphate all at once.
But if you didn't do it in the spring, it would be
Yeah, if
okay
it's-
to
if
do
it's
it
one of those
now, or is
things,
it better
I
to
forgot
wait?
to do it, you can still go ahead and do it. Yeah.
We actually have a handout about that. I'll make
We
sure
do.
that gets included on the.
Yeah, so we'll include the handout on that I think it's called the 4-step feeding. So basically, this one, it's 4 times a year, but the soil sulfur is just once. And then either the superphosphate or the bone meal in the case of flowering. Yes?
What about evergreens?
Evergreens. So The evergreens that, for example, the blue ones, they'll lose their blue. When the pH is getting too high, they'll look more green instead of blue, or just not have the greatest color. So you'll notice the difference it makes in those too. And remember, this isn't just about color, it's about health. If the color isn't right, it means it's not quite healthy either. So for maximum health and best color, you want to be feeding correctly and controlling that pH. The pH of the soil here tends anywhere between 7 and 9. I think there was one case where we actually saw a 10. Ouch, that's like sterile. Good luck growing anything in that. The water, the last time we tested it was 9? It was a 9. So every time you water, that pH wants to creep up again in the soil. So using acidic fertilizers, using acidifiers every year are kind of important here in this area because of what we have. The all-purpose definitely is acidic. We made it for this area because we have unique needs. Most of the country does not have to fight alkalinity. It's just not normal. We have unique needs here. Now we're going into monsoon, so I have to let you know. As soon as those rains start, actually the humidity's already started. It's gonna get even worse when the rain starts. We're gonna start seeing fungus. We're gonna see black spot, we're gonna see mildew. The roses do tend to get it, especially if they're not in the sun from dawn to dusk. The more shade they get, the harder it is for them to fight off mildew. So that's something you want to be aware of. So I brought up this fungicide here. This is called a biofungicide. This is actually, to explain it in the simplest terms possible, this is a probiotic for plants. You give this to them. It's actually like a bacteria, a bacillus. I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but this is a probiotic. You give it to the plants. You can either spray it directly on the leaves, you can drench it into the soil, you can do both, either is fine. The plant absorbs it and works with the immune system and trains it to fight off fungus specifically. So this is proving to be pretty effective. You're gonna see a lot of mildew, especially when those rains start. Like I said, a lot of you may already be seeing it just because the humidity is up. Yes?
I have a ornamental apple tree, there's a little apple, and 2 months ago the white stuff started appearing. But I also have a pumpkin crop on stock. I treated the tree and treated the stock. And I cut the stock in the bottom in the summers.
Okay.
And when I water, it comes out of the soil, which I stuff out of the soil.
White stuff coming out of the soil when you water.
Yeah, it's the same size as on the tree. And I noticed it starting to get up on the tree.
Not growing out of soil, but I mean bubbling up when you water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like something else. Let's talk about that afterward. Well, it sounds like something is in the soil. And we'll talk about that, yes.
Does that revitalize work on other stuff, like vegetable gardens and stuff?
Yes, this is safe for everything. You can put on your vegetables, fruit trees, all over the landscape. Very effective, very natural, organic. We're very pleased with the results that we're getting from it. And we still encourage a lot of feedback from our customers too.
Do you put it on when you see the fungus or before? I mean,
All fungicides can be used after the fact, but work even better before. Because once a fungus attacks, okay, you use the biofungicide or any fungicide, and the fungus goes away, but it leaves scar tissue behind, which isn't very pretty. It can attack the fungus more effectively if you use it as a preventative, and also you won't see scarring that way. So definitely, I would say you may just want to go ahead and grab a bottle and start spraying down things that you know are going to have it, especially if you've seen it in the past. You already know that your rose or your plants or your landscape have an issue with getting fungus during monsoon. You already know it's going to happen. Don't wait for it to happen. Just go for it right now. It always works better as a preventative. But yes, if you haven't done it and then you start to see it, you can still use this. So absolutely. All right, any questions? Bugs, fungus, what have we been seeing, James, on bugs?
It's a white crust, and it grows usually in the joints of the leaves.
Ah.
Sometimes at the bottom of the stem.
Spider mites.
We've been seeing a lot of spider mites. It's worse than ever this year, spider mites. We're seeing aphids, we're seeing woolly aphids, mealybug, blister beetle broke out already. How many weeks ago? Yeah, we're seeing a number of insects. So I really recommend get yourself a nice multi-purpose insect control. Now our multi-purpose is temporarily out of stock because we had so many breakouts this year, more than usual. We ran out. We still have the triple action. So you can use the triple action in its place right now. Try to use it in the evening to prevent burning and also to prevent spraying any bees that tend to be out in the morning. So put this out. You'll find that the big two insects that you have to worry about with roses are thrip and aphids, which are especially prominent during the cooler weather, but even during warmer weather, you tend to still see aphids. Those are your two big things. So you'll want to have a good broad range insect control. And as soon as things start cooling down, right now it'll be kind of hot and humid at first because of monsoon, and then you'll start to see it cooling again, going into fall. The thrip are going to hit again. Remember how bad they were this spring? It was pretty nasty. They hit everything. Everything was just, you saw leaves curling up, just kind of crumpling, curling, twisting, contorting. You saw the edges of petals looking singed. That was thrip. They hit really, really hard this year. You saw new leaves just drying up on the plant. That was thrip. They hit even harder than normal this year. They tend to come out during cool weather. Again, prevent. As soon as it starts cooling down and you know they're going to start coming out, just start spraying. Spray new growth and flower buds, because that's where they go. We go for the new stuff.
Blister beetles I've got all over, like weeds and everything. How long do those last? I mean,
Blister beetles?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got hit kind of early with the blister beetle. You want to use something fast acting because they devastate in a hurry. Blister beetle, there's different types of blister beetles that we get. The one we're seeing right now for the past few weeks now that have been hit really hard, they're about this long, about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. I think most of them are about an inch and a quarter. They're blackish color with white speckles, and they have a neck. You'll notice a long body and a neck. That's how you recognize them very quickly. If you're seeing them, get rid of them right away because they do a lot of damage. They always travel in swarms, not just one by himself, but always in swarms. They move in, they land, and when they leave nothing behind.
Like a gang comes to.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're like a gang. Yeah.
Locust.
It's about this long, and pitch black, orange wings. Might need to see a picture. Yeah. You know what? July and August, we tend to see a lot of big bugs come out. That's,
The bigger version of them.
yeah, you'll see all kinds of beetles will come out this time of year. They'll come out, we'll see the bigger grasshoppers. Up till now, we've been seeing the cute little baby grasshoppers that are annoying and eating at stuff, but we haven't really seen the worst of them yet. The big ones are about to come out now. We'll see the bigger beetles, we'll see the cicadas, all the big stuff comes out right around monsoon time, July, August, right around that time. That's when all the big stuff hits.
So what do you suggest for the bigger stuff?
So for the bigger stuff, we definitely would suggest the multi-purpose insect control.
We're getting that in stock.
Yeah, we'll be getting it in stock soon. I don't have an exact
I
date.
understand it's supposed to ship on the 23rd.
Oh, wonderful. Good. We have a date. So we think it's shipping on the 23rd, arriving sometime soon after that then.
Say within.
Wonderful. Yes, good.
Would that kill the blister beetles?
Yeah. I think right now we have a high yield permethrin product down there that you can also use for right now. If you've got blister beetle now, you need to treat now. Yeah. go for it. All right, let's see, what else have we covered? So tell you what, let's go ahead and say goodbye to our friends online. And if you have any questions about roses or anything else, I'm here, and so is Cheryl, our rose queen.